Hey, a question came in that I thought I'd try to answer by Facebook Live, so here I go. And by the way, before the question came in, just yesterday I talked to somebody who's doing really well during COVID-19 times. Sheltering in, things are sweet with the family, this and that is going well, income is cool. And as soon as she described this reality for me, she quickly needed to sort of apologize for, how well she was doing and acknowledge that she knew there were a lot of people having a really hard time right now. And, it reminds me of when people are in a good relationship. And it's like you're not allowed in this culture to say, yeah, we're doing really well together, like we're really good together. If you say that, you have to get uncomfortable and worry about the people around you who may not be as happy, and you also need to make sure that you're not implying that you're doing everything right and that everything's perfect. So I hardly ever, I don't know that I've ever heard anybody say, yeah, I have a really great relationship and it's going well. It's like they almost have to, it's a compulsion to say, yeah, don't get me wrong, we're not perfect. It's not always rosy. There are some troubles. So as far as I'm concerned, in my case, for example, I expect that I'll still have shit come up and stuff to work out until the day I die. And so if we have that, well, then it'll come up in your closest relationship, because people who come really close to us push up against our raw places and our existing buttons that we're still dismantling and healing. And it's okay. That's how it works. And without reference to that, since that's how it works, we can say, hey, this is really sweet. It's really nourishing. It feels really good. I feel like I'm at home with this person. And it's okay. It's good to say that. We're meant to be satisfied in our human relationships. So when you're doing well at a time when a lot of people are suffering, I want to point out a few things to support you to just stand in the truth of that, unapologetically appreciative of what's coming in for you, of how life takes care of you, and knowing that in no way does that mean that you're being careless with other human beings. You're certainly not harming them with your well-being. And you get to have that. So let's begin here. I like to say whatever you vote for any human being, you'd better be willing to vote for yourself. So I invite you to that. You'd better be willing to let yourself have what you wish other human beings, all human beings, could have. And you know that where we are to date, this is planet Earth. In the Earth realm, things are not perfect. There will always be stuff going wrong, stuff to course correct with, big problems, suffering, pain, and your inhabiting what feels good and is going well is not the cause of that. Okay, and also when you're doing well, you are not taking away from somebody else unless you're literally doing that. Like some choices corporations make, profit over people, like somebody paying themselves a giant salary while the people at the low end of their establishment are barely making or are not making a living wage. So, but most of the time in the doings of people who are just making things work well, or in a good place, or in alignment right now, or right now not in a struggle with money. They're aligned there. They've worked some stuff out, or that's not their area where they've got to work shit out. Whatever it is, you are not harming others by doing well. Something I love from Abraham. You can't get sick enough to help people who aren't healthy. You can't get poor enough to help people struggling with money. You can't get miserable enough to support those who are unhappy. In other words, this weird tendency we have to think that somehow we're doing harm to others when we're doing well is completely unfounded. And just notice, pause to be with the absurdity of it. And in fact, gosh, I've so many times wished that liberal people were better at making money and more willing to be rich, so that, we would have more to give to those liberal causes we espouse. So invite yourself to get okay with your own well-being, whether it's physical well-being, whether it's economic well-being, whether it's happiness in any realm of life, and know that that does not harm others. Now, I want to talk for a minute about the concept of privilege, because it's one of those places we can get really tripped up. And I find it hard to articulate, so I'm going to start in a place that's easier for me. And that is talking about gratitude versus appreciation. So I used to be really uncomfortable with the concept of gratitude, and I especially, I could feel something sticky about it that felt bad, and it reminded me of old bullshit that I learned in the church where I was raised, a fundamentalist situation that I've moved away from. And I got really excited when I heard Abraham Hicks articulate what I hadn't yet been able to put my finger on fully and clearly. And basically, Abraham says appreciation is more powerful and cleaner than gratitude. Sometimes gratitude is used with all kinds of should, all kinds of but I don't deserve it, or even fear this will be taken away from me if I'm not properly grateful. And I'm always fascinated watching how people talk about gratitude or their gratitude lists, or even how they just actually overtly say I should be grateful. They get this sort of moralistic should in there, and it's almost like we feel we're bad people if we're not grateful. So, appreciation, says Abraham, is cleaner and more powerful, and just feel it. Feel what it is to simply, wow, I appreciate this. I appreciate that I got this payment. I appreciate that I get to live in this house or in this beautiful place. Or I appreciate how funny my partner is, or how much I enjoy the people around me on a day-to-day basis. I appreciate how well my body functions, despite whatever isn't doing so great, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I invite you to play with just feeling into any stickiness in your gratitude and moving to appreciation instead. Now, what does this have to do with privilege? In the same way, I think that when we talk about privilege, it's one of those loaded words that's so sticky, that has so much sort of ick attached to it. So I think there's a way that it's clean and good, like where what we mean is, don't be careless with marginalized people. Don't assume that other people have everything you have, or have grown up with the level of support or ease moving through the world, or permission to be yourself, or whatever that you get to have, perhaps as a white person, perhaps as a cisgendered male, perhaps as a straight person, whatever, someone who just grew up with money, someone who lives in a country where there are certain privileges and freedoms and lack of ever being in a war zone and things like that. So yeah, so if you're just aware of that and hold an awareness of that in a way that appreciates it, and that actually remembers that that's not everyone's reality, and doesn't speak to others as if it's their fault if they don't have that, or even assuming that they've had the same thing. Great, that's all fine and good. But I notice a way that we use it that's sticky and painful and not helpful at all. For example, someone who aspires to living beautifully, ethically, simply, who actually holds and stands in, votes with their good ethics, that they agonize over privilege, that they use the word privilege to keep beating themselves with a stick when actually they don't deserve that. They use it in a way that keeps them guilty, and guilt is never empowering. It's heavy, it's weighty. When we're motivated by guilt and obligation, in fact, we're not thinking the most clearly, we're not able to be the most inspired, we're not thinking the most creatively, and we're not able to give our best. So when you try to beat yourself up with concepts of privilege, or somehow hold yourself in line, you probably don't need to if you're using it that way, but when you hold yourself in line with a concept like privilege, in fact what you're doing is, it's like binding yourself with a straitjacket. You're putting contractions, compressions, restrictions, limitations, heaviness, all kinds of stuff on yourself that in fact does not support you to be your cleanest, most creative, most loving, most inspired in actually serving the populations that you wish to pay attention to, or whose lesser fortune you actually care about. You know, and may share in some collective grief about. Like, I remember being in high school in history class going, holy fuck, when I really took in, I had a good teacher, when I really took in what was done to Native Americans, to Africans who became African Americans, to Japanese peoples who became Japanese American peoples, and so on and so on. Like, it was really horrifying. And you know, this was just a young person waking up to the realities of planet Earth. But I noticed that during the years when I was especially concerned about privilege, I was depressed and heavy and not really able to do a lot. And now that I seek not to motivate myself through such concepts and don't keep my focus there because it's weighty. I don't trust what's weighty. I trust what feels expansive, and that doesn't mean there won't be pain in it. Please notice the difference between clean pain that really, that's compassion fueled, as opposed to those sticky things that cloud our clarity and bring in unnecessary weightiness, and I cannot emphasize enough, then actually prevent us from showing up in the cleanest, clearest, most inspired way to do the most good we are able to do. So during Corona-19 times here, that was not what we call it, I invite you to embrace the possibility of feeling good, of being healthy, of having money coming in. You get to have those things. We vote for that for everyone, so you'd better be willing to vote for it for yourself. And if you see ways that you can be of support to another human being, if you feel inspired to give something, notice you make yourself heavy when you think you have to fix all of it and you miss the little, oh, I could just send some money to so-and-so, or I could just whatever, buy this or do that. Because we just get so shut down. We go to nothing when we're an all or nothing, like it's my job to fix this whole messy, ugly picture. So keep your state up. Prioritize feeling good. It's not only okay, it's something to prioritize. And then, wow, spread it. Spread that love. Spread that well-being.